There are moments in life, perhaps you're in one right now, when stillness no longer feels soothing or serene. Instead, it presses down on you, not loudly, but heavily. You might be sitting in your favorite chair, the one that has accompanied you for years, only to realize your mind refuses to settle. Thoughts begin to drift, small worries, old regrets, imagined futures. And before you even notice, anxiety has taken a seat beside you, uninvited but persistent. Welcome to the Moon Mind Temple, a sanctuary of peaceful thought. In tonight's gentle journey, we'll explore timeless Buddhist wisdom that can help quiet your anxious mind and guide you toward restful sleep. As you listen, allow yourself simply to be. There is nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to go. Just breathe and receive these words as we walk this path together. The quiet hours between dusk and sleep can sometimes feel the heaviest. The house grows still, but your mind grows loud. The silence that once brought comfort now feels like a weight, creating space for every thought you were too busy to notice throughout the day. This is a common experience, one that connects us all in our shared humanity. You are not alone in these late-night moments of worry. What if I told you that this anxiety is not a sign that something is wrong with you? That it is not a weakness, not a failure, not a punishment for feeling too deeply or loving too much? What if, instead, anxiety is simply a signal, a gentle indicator pointing you towards something important that needs your tender attention? In the teachings of the Buddha, suffering, including anxiety, is not something to fight against. It is something to understand. More than that, it is something that can guide us back to what truly matters in life. You see, many of us have been taught to push anxiety away, to ignore it, suppress it, or cover it up with countless distractions. But Buddhist wisdom teaches something entirely different, that our discomfort may be a doorway, that anxiety is not our enemy, it is a teacher, arriving with a message we may have been avoiding for far too long. This is especially true in the later chapters of life, when there is more stillness, more space to feel, more time to remember. The message becomes clearer when we are no longer rushing from task to task. Instead, we remain with ourselves, with our thoughts, with our breath. And that is where the deeper work begins, the work of returning to who you truly are. As you listen to these words, allow your body to soften. Feel the weight of your body supported by whatever you're resting on, perhaps your bed, a couch, or a favorite chair. Notice how your breath moves in and out without any effort. This natural rhythm has been with you since your very first moment in this world, and it will remain with you until the last. There is deep peace in that simple truth. Tonight, we'll explore powerful insights from the heart of Buddhist philosophy, ideas that don't erase anxiety, but gently transform the way we see it. These teachings have comforted monks in distant mountains, calmed warriors before battle, and brought peace to countless ordinary people facing the silent storms of daily life. If you've ever felt trapped in your thoughts, overwhelmed by emotions you can't name, or simply exhausted from carrying the weight of worry for too long, I invite you to stay with me. This journey is not about denial or toxic positivity. It is about truth. It is about freedom. Because the truth is, you are not broken. You are not failing. You are simply being invited to see your anxiety in a new light. Let us begin not by resisting anxiety, but by turning toward it, right where it lives, in our minds and in the things we cling to most tightly. In Buddhist understanding, anxiety doesn't arise out of nowhere. It has roots, and those roots are known by two powerful names, attachment and aversion. Imagine attachment as the clenched hand of the mind. It grips tightly to the things we love, comfort, certainty, the people we've built our lives around. And when life threatens to change, as it inevitably does, that grip becomes fear. It whispers, "Don't take this from me." We hold fast to what brings us joy, to the familiar routines that make us feel safe, to the relationships that give life meaning. And in that grasping, anxiety is born, the fear of loss, the fear of change. On the other side is aversion, the part of us that pushes away what we don't want: pain, loss, illness, loneliness, even the natural process of aging. We reject these experiences, we resist them, we fight them, hoping that maybe, just maybe, if we push hard enough, they will leave us alone. We turn away from difficult emotions, from uncomfortable sensations, from the challenging truths of being human. And in that turning away, anxiety finds another home. The fear of what we cannot control, the exhaustion of constant resistance. But this clinging and pushing, it's tiring, and more than that, it doesn't work. As the Buddha taught, whatever is subject to arising is also subject to ceasing. In other words, everything changes. Your body changes, your relationships shift. Even your emotions, those storms that seem like they'll last forever, will rise and fall like waves on the ocean. And yet, it is our refusal to accept this truth that gives rise to anxiety. Consider the nature of change in your own life. Think of the seasons. Winter gives way to spring. Summer fades into fall. Think of the moon, full and then waning. The tides, rising and receding. These natural rhythms do not cause suffering. It is only when we expect permanence in an impermanent world that we begin to suffer. Imagine a retired man named Thomas, who used to walk along the lakeside path near his home every morning at 6 a.m. It was part of who he was, his discipline, his routine, the morning light reflecting off the water, the familiar faces of fellow early risers, the steady rhythm of his footsteps on the path. These things gave structure to his day and meaning to his identity. But when a hip injury forced him to stop, Thomas began to unravel. He hadn't just lost a habit, he had lost what he believed was a part of who he was. His anxiety began to grow. Mornings, once filled with peace, became hours he dreaded, quiet reminders of what was no longer there. In a quiet conversation over tea, a friend gently asked, "Thomas, what are you holding on to?" He paused, looked out the window, and whispered, "The version of me that could still move freely." This is what the Buddha pointed to, that our suffering does not arise from change itself, but from our refusal to let go of what once was. When we cling to the past or reject the present, anxiety slips into the space between and begins to whisper, "You're losing control." But here is the liberating truth. We never had control to begin with. The lotus blooms in muddy waters and still radiates beauty. In the same way, our peace doesn't come from keeping everything the same. It comes from learning to open our hands, to stop gripping, to stop resisting, and simply allow life to be as it is. Take a moment to think about your hands. Perhaps they're resting in your lap or gently at your sides. Now, imagine them clenching around something. Fingers curled tight, muscles tense, the energy of holding on. Then, picture those same hands slowly beginning to open, fingers releasing, palms facing upward in a gesture of acceptance. This is the physical expression of letting go. Not of giving up what matters, but of holding it gently, with enough space for it to shift, to move, to become what it needs to become. You are not your habits. You are not your youth. You are not your past. And as you begin to loosen your grip on expectations, on perfection, on the need to understand everything, you may notice something remarkable. Anxiety, too, begins to loosen its grip on you. As an ancient Buddhist text, the Dhammapada reminds us, from attachment springs grief, from attachment springs fear, but one who is free from attachment knows neither grief nor fear. What if, today, even just a little, you allowed yourself to unclench the fist of the mind? What if peace wasn't found in getting everything back to the way it was, but in greeting this very moment with open arms? This doesn't mean letting go of everything all at once. Small steps toward acceptance can bring surprising relief. Maybe it begins with acknowledging a simple truth. Things are changing, and that's natural. Maybe it's allowing yourself to feel sadness over a loss without layering it with resistance. I shouldn't feel this way. Maybe it's simply pausing in a moment of tension to open your hands, both literally and figuratively, and release what you cannot control. Remember, letting go is not the same as giving up. It's not about abandoning what matters to you. It's about holding your experiences, your expectations, even your identity more lightly. It's about making space for life to flow through you rather than against you. And in that space, anxiety often finds less to feed on. As you continue to listen, allow your breath to deepen just a little. With each inhale, imagine drawing in a sense of calm and clarity. With each exhale, release whatever no longer serves you. Your body knows how to return to balance. Your mind knows how to find peace. Sometimes we just need to step out of our own way and let that natural wisdom rise to the surface. There comes a moment in every life, perhaps in the quiet hours before dawn or in the middle of a crowded afternoon, when a thought arrives, uninvited, and settles heavily in the chest. It might whisper, "Something is wrong," or scream, "Will this ever get better?" And before we even realize it, we're no longer living in the present moment. We're living inside that thought. It becomes its own world, a world of shadows, tension, and fear. The mind is astonishing in its ability to construct entire landscapes from a single thought. A worry about health can unfold into visions of hospitals and worst-case scenarios. A concern for a loved one can spiral into complex stories of rejection or loss. A moment of self-doubt can evolve into a lifelong narrative of failure. These thought worlds feel profoundly real when we're caught in them. They have texture, emotion, weight. They can make our hearts race and our bodies tense as if the imagined danger were physically present. But the Buddha, in his still and radiant clarity, offered a simple yet powerful insight, one that begins to unravel anxiety at its very root. This is just a thought. Pause with that for a moment. Not every thought is true. Not every thought deserves your trust. Some are echoes of old fears. Some are habits passed down like heirlooms. Some are simply the brain doing what it has done for centuries, scanning, protecting, imagining. But a thought, no matter how loud or persistent, is not a truth. It is a cloud drifting through the sky of your awareness. Consider how many thoughts pass through your mind in a single day. Thousands, countless. Many contradict one another. Many are fleeting. Many are fragments or impressions, not fully formed ideas. If we were to believe every thought that arises, we would be pulled in 1,000 directions, never finding a center, never finding peace. The Buddha saw this nature of the mind, its restlessness, its tendency to proliferate, and offered a way to meet it with wisdom and greater ease. A wise teacher once said, "Don't believe everything you think. Even the thoughts that feel urgent are often just ripples on the surface of the mind." And the more we meditate, reflect, and truly observe, the more we begin to see the truth in that. Anxiety, no matter how overwhelming, often begins with a single thought, and that thought only gains power when we believe it without question. Imagine every thought as a seed. Some seeds, if planted in fertile soil and nurtured, grow into towering trees with deep roots and wide branches. Others, if merely noticed and allowed to pass, remain just that, seeds, small, contained, harmless. The practice is learning which thoughts to plant and which to let pass, not with forceful rejection, but with gentle discernment. Consider the story of Marlene, 76 years old, widowed, and adjusting to a quieter life after decades of shared routine. After her husband passed away, she began to experience a strange new kind of fear. She would sit alone in the living room, and suddenly a worry would arise. What if I fall and no one is there? What if I forget to turn off the stove? What if I start to lose my memory? These weren't irrational fears. They were grounded in possibility. But they weren't happening. They were thoughts, and they came with a racing heart, a tight chest, and a mind that would spiral out of control. In the silence of the house, these thoughts grew louder, more persistent. They would wake her in the night, follow her through her morning routines, sit beside her at meals. They became unwelcome companions, casting a shadow over moments that might have otherwise offered peace, or even joy. Marlene began to identify with these fears, thinking of herself as an anxious person, as if anxiety had become a permanent part of who she was. She started attending weekly mindfulness classes at the local community center. One afternoon, the teacher asked the group to write down a simple sentence. "This thought is not me, it is just a thought." At first, it seemed silly, too simple to make any real difference. But the teacher encouraged them to use the phrase whenever they noticed anxiety beginning to rise. "Don't fight the thought," she said. "Don't try to push it away. Just notice it, name it, and remember it's not you." So Marlene gave it a try. The next time that familiar fear arose, "What if I fall?" she gently acknowledged, "This is a thought about falling. It is just a thought." When the worry about memory came, she recognized, "This is a thought about forgetting. It is just a thought." She wasn't denying the content of the thoughts or the emotions they stirred. She was simply creating a small space between herself and the thought, enough space to remember that she was the one observing the thought, not the thought itself. Over time, this became Marlene's anchor. Each time fear returned, she softly repeated, "This thought is not me, it is just a thought." And like a knot slowly loosening, the grip of those fears began to ease. The thoughts still came, sometimes with the same force, but they began to feel more like weather passing through than something that defined who she was. Now, as you continue to listen, gently bring your attention back to the rhythm of your breath. It flows in and out like waves lapping the shore and retreating back into the vast ocean. Your breath connects you to this present moment, the only place where true peace resides. Anxiety often begins with something simple, a fleeting sense of unease while sipping your morning tea, a sudden tightness in the chest while folding clothes, or a vague feeling that something isn't quite right, even when nothing specific has happened. For many, especially those living alone or finding themselves in quieter routines, this subtle hum of anxiety can slip in like a draft beneath the door. It's not loud, but it lingers, pulling the mind away from the warmth of now into the cold corridors of what if and once upon a time. The mind, when left unchecked, has an incredible ability to travel, backward into memories, both sweet and painful, forward into imagined futures filled with both hope and fear. And while this capacity to reflect and anticipate serves us in many ways, it can also disconnect us from the only moment we truly have, this one, right here, right now. But mindfulness, as taught in Buddhist tradition, offers us a doorway back, back to our bodies, back to our breath, back to the only place peace can truly be found, right here, in this very moment. Mindfulness is not about emptying the mind or forcing stillness. It's about becoming intimate with what is, attending with loving awareness to the sensations in the body, the flow of breath, the rising and falling of thoughts. It's learning to be where your feet are, instead of getting lost in the memories of yesterday or the fears of tomorrow. The Buddha said, "Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment." And that is a teaching that speaks directly to the heart of anxiety, because anxiety is always reaching forward. It's the mind trying to anticipate, to protect, to prepare. But the present moment asks nothing of us but to simply be here. Think for a moment. How many times have you worried about something that never came to pass? How many hours have been spent rehearsing conversations that never happened, anticipating problems that never arose, imagining worst-case scenarios that stayed safely in the realm of imagination? This is not to say that all future concerns are misguided. There is wisdom in preparation, in foresight, but anxiety takes that natural planning ability and distorts it, pulling our attention away from the now and anchoring it in what might be, often at great cost to our peace and well-being. Mindfulness invites us to recognize when the mind has wandered into the landscapes of the past or the future, and gently bring it back to the present, not with criticism or frustration, but with the same patience you might offer a child who has wandered off the path. "Ah, there you are. Come back now. This is where life is happening." Let me share a story that might resonate with you. There was an old man named Frank, a retired carpenter, quiet by nature and kind at heart. After his wife passed away, the silence of the house began to feel more like an echo chamber than a place of refuge. Small worries turned into spirals. What if I forget something important? What if I fall and no one finds me? What if I become a burden to my children? These thoughts took root in the empty hours of the day. Frank found that these worries felt strongest in the evening, when the house grew still and the activities of the day no longer served as distractions. He would sit in his old armchair, the one he and his wife had picked out decades ago, and feel the absence of her voice, her movements, her presence. And in that absence, fear would grow. Frank's doctor recommended a local mindfulness meditation group. Skeptical, Frank gave it a try. "I don't think sitting there not thinking is going to help," he told his daughter. But he went anyway, if only to have somewhere to be on Tuesday evenings. At his first session, the teacher simply asked them to sit, close their eyes, and follow the breath. Not to change it, not to force it, just to notice it. At first, Frank felt awkward, unsure what he was supposed to do or feel. But he followed the instructions, bringing his attention to the feeling of the breath moving in and out of his body. Later, Frank would say, "At first, all I could notice was how loud my thoughts were. They were shouting at me, one after the other, like they were afraid I wouldn't hear them unless they yelled. But eventually, I started to notice my breath. Then I heard the birds outside the window. Then I felt the warmth in my hands. That was the turning point, when I realized there was more to my experience than just my thoughts. Each breath became an anchor, each step a meditation, each moment an invitation to return. He began practicing 5 minutes a day, just sitting in the garden, hands resting on his knees, eyes soft, breath steady. He wasn't trying to empty his mind, he was simply watching it, like watching clouds drift across the sky. And over time, the clouds grew lighter. The worries still come, Frank told his daughter a few months later, but now there's more space around them. They don't fill the whole room anymore. And sometimes, when I really pay attention to what's actually happening, the taste of my coffee, the sound of rain on the roof, the feeling of wood beneath my hands in the workshop, I realize I've spent hours without those thoughts bothering me. That's a kind of freedom I didn't know was possible. This is the power of mindfulness. It doesn't promise to erase our difficulties, but it teaches us how to sit with them without fear. It helps us see that we are not the storm, we are the sky that holds it. Mindfulness is also deeply compassionate. If you get lost in thought, that's okay. The moment you notice it, you're already back. That moment of noticing is the practice. That return is the victory. So many of us judge ourselves harshly when we realize our minds have wandered, when anxiety has pulled us away from the present moment. We think, I'm bad at meditating, or I can't do this, or my mind is too busy. But in the Buddhist tradition, each time you realize your attention has drifted is actually a moment of success, not failure. It's the moment awareness has returned, when you've woken up from the dream of thought. That moment of recognition is the heart of the practice. And here's another beautiful aspect of mindfulness. It can be practiced anywhere, anytime. You don't need special equipment or a perfect environment. You can practice while washing the dishes, feeling the warmth of the water on your hands. You can practice while walking, noticing the pressure and release in your feet. You can practice while listening to a loved one, offering them your full, undivided attention. Any moment can be a mindful moment if you choose to be fully present with it. So, if anxiety visits you in the quiet of your days, don't fight it. Instead, offer it your breath. Anchor yourself in what you can feel: your feet on the floor, the warmth of sunlight, the rhythm of your breath moving in and out. This is not denial. It is not escape. It is a sacred act of return. Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh reminds us, feelings come and go like clouds in a windy sky. Conscious breathing is my anchor. Try it now. Take a breath. Feel it pass through your nose. Feel your chest rise. And as you exhale, gently whisper to yourself, I am here, and here is enough. This simple practice, returning to your breath, returning to your body, returning to this moment, is like placing stepping stones across the turbulent river of anxiety. Each stone is a moment of presence, a moment of peace. And even as the water rushes around you, you have these stones to support your journey. Remember, mindfulness is not about achieving a perfect state of calm or eliminating all thoughts. It's about clearly seeing what is already here, including anxiety when it arises, and relating to it with awareness rather than automatic reaction. Sometimes, simply acknowledging, anxiety is here, right now, without judgment or resistance, can begin to transform the experience. The anxiety may still be there, but your relationship to it shifts. And in that shift lies freedom. There is a quiet voice that often accompanies anxiety, one that doesn't come from the world around us, but from within. It is the inner critic whispering, "What's wrong with you? You should be stronger. You're such a burden." And over time, this voice wears us down, not only with fear, but with shame. You might recognize this voice in your own experience. Perhaps it speaks to you late at night as you review the events of the day and find all the ways you believe you've fallen short. Perhaps it accompanies the physical symptoms of anxiety, adding a layer of self-judgment. Other people don't get this worked up. What's wrong with me? Maybe it compares your inner world to what you think you see in others. Everyone else seems fine. Why can't I be? This voice is especially deceptive because it disguises itself as wisdom, as the part of you that knows better and wants you to do better. It pretends to be helpful self-criticism, motivation, realistic assessment. But when you look more closely, you'll often see that this voice rarely offers any true support. Instead, it traps you in a cycle of shame and anxiety, making the path to peace feel even harder to find. But within the teachings of the Buddha, there is a gentle, radical antidote: compassion. And not just compassion for others, but for yourself, especially for yourself. You see, many of us grew up in times or cultures where emotional needs were suppressed, where strength meant stoicism, and where self-sacrifice was seen as noble. You've cared for others, your children, your partner, your aging parents, while quietly setting aside your own pain, your exhaustion, your needs. And maybe now, as you finally have space to feel, everything you've postponed is arriving at once: anxiety, guilt, grief, regret. But here's what Buddhist wisdom reminds us: the path to peace is not paved with perfection, it is walked with gentleness. The Buddha said, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and compassion." These words are not indulgent, they are a lifeline. They remind us that the circle of compassion must include ourselves if it is to be complete. Just like the oxygen mask on a plane must go on your face first before you can help another, self-compassion is the foundation from which genuine care for others can flow. Consider the story of Ruth, a 79-year-old woman who had spent most of her life caring for others. A nurse by profession and a mother by instinct, she had always been the strong one, the dependable one. Through family crises, through her husband's long illness, through raising children and supporting grandchildren, Ruth was the steady hand, the listening ear, the one who put her own needs last. But after retiring, and especially after the passing of her sister, the one person Ruth sometimes confided her struggles to, she began to experience waves of anxiety. She felt foolish, even ashamed. "Why now?" she asked. "I've always kept myself together. I've faced far worse than this quiet house, this slower life. What's wrong with me that now, when everything should be easier, I'm falling apart?" At a mindfulness meditation session at her local community center, a Buddhist teacher invited the group to place a hand on their hearts and silently repeat the phrase, "May I be kind to myself in this moment. May I accept myself just as I am." At first, Ruth couldn't do it. Her chest tightened, tears welled up. It felt foreign, even selfish. Weren't there people with real problems, people more deserving of compassion than her? But the teacher gently reminded her, self-compassion isn't about ego, it's about softening. It's about softening. It's about not turning away from your own pain. Think about how you would respond to a dear friend who came to you with the very same struggles you're facing, the teacher suggested. Would you tell them they're being silly, that they should be stronger? Or would you offer kindness, understanding, a gentle space for their pain? Ruth instantly knew she would respond with compassion. The same compassion she had given to patients, family, and friends all her life. So why, the teacher asked, do you deserve any less? That moment marked the beginning of Ruth's healing, not because the anxiety disappeared, but because she no longer faced it alone. She began writing letters to herself, forgiving the parts of her that were too tired to keep going, too overwhelmed to explain, too hurt to ask for help. She began speaking to herself with the same gentleness she would offer a suffering friend. And slowly, she began to feel whole again. In Buddhist practice, compassion is considered a medicine of the heart, and like any medicine, it must be taken regularly, especially when the symptoms of suffering begin to show. Here are a few gentle ways you can practice self-compassion in your daily life. Speak kindly to yourself, especially when you feel afraid or anxious. Replace "what's wrong with me" with "this is really hard, and I'm doing the best I can." Notice the difference in how these words feel in your body. One closes down, creates tension. The other opens, creates space. Place a hand on your heart in moments of worry. It's a physical gesture of care, a reminder that you are not abandoned. Feel the warmth of your hand, the steady beat of your heart beneath your palm. This simple act activates the body's care system, releasing hormones that can help counter the stress response. Offer yourself the same kindness you would give a dear friend. If you wouldn't say it to them, don't say it to yourself. This practice can be transformative, helping us recognize how differently we treat ourselves compared to those we love. The next time you catch a harsh inner judgment, pause and ask, would I say this to someone I care about? Acknowledge your efforts. You've survived so much. You're still learning. That matters. Even on days when it feels like you've accomplished very little, when anxiety has drained more energy than you'd like, recognize the courage it takes to simply keep going, to stay present, to continue seeking peace despite the challenges. Compassion doesn't fix everything, but it changes how we move through everything. It turns anxiety from a prison into a path that walks alongside your pain, not against it. It reminds us that struggle is a part of being human, not a personal failure or punishment. And when we accept that truth, we begin to feel less alone in our struggles, more connected to the shared vulnerability that binds us all. Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "When you love someone, the best thing you can offer them is your presence. How can you love if you are not there?" The same is true for ourselves. If we are not present for our own pain, who will be? If we turn away from our suffering, abandon ourselves in the moments we most need care, how can we truly heal? Self-compassion is not self-pity or self-indulgence. It's not about feeling sorry for yourself or making excuses. It's about meeting your own suffering with the same respect and care you would offer to anyone else who deserves respect. And you deserve that respect, that care, that compassion, simply because you exist, because you are here, because you are trying. So the next time anxiety knocks on your door, greet it with kindness. Offer it a cup of tea. Sit beside it. Ask what it needs, not so that you can fix it, but so that you can hold it gently, like a frightened child in the dark. Because sometimes what our inner world needs most is simply to know that someone is still listening. And you can be that someone for yourself. Imagine anxiety not as an enemy to be conquered, but as a messenger carrying important information. Maybe it's telling you that you need rest. Maybe it's highlighting a value you deeply care about. Maybe it's revealing a wound that still needs gentle tending. When we meet anxiety with compassion instead of fear or shame, we create the conditions for true understanding, for true healing. And remember, this practice of self-compassion is like any other skill. The more it's used, the stronger it becomes. At first, it may feel awkward or even impossible, especially if you've spent a lifetime being hard on yourself.
But with each small act of kindness toward yourself, you're laying down new neural pathways, new habits of the heart and mind. You're teaching yourself, moment by moment, that you are worthy of gentleness, worthy of care, that your suffering matters and deserves a compassionate response.
Freedom within anxiety, distinguishing pain from suffering. The beauty of this teaching is that it doesn't promise the disappearance of anxiety. It offers freedom within the anxiety itself. The Buddha never said we wouldn't experience fear or sorrow, but he showed us how not to suffer unnecessarily because of them. There is an important distinction here between pain and suffering. Pain is the initial experience, loss, fear, discomfort. Suffering is what we add to that experience through resistance, avoidance, and identification. When we believe we are our anxiety, we suffer. But when we recognize anxiety as a passing experience, something we are aware of but not defined by, suffering begins to soften, even if the discomfort remains. Decoding the mantra. This is not mine. This is not me. This is not who I am. Let's take a closer look at this powerful phrase. This is not mine. This means we do not own the emotion. It is not our possession. It is not something we have to protect or preserve. It is simply something arising, like a wave on the ocean. Just as we do not claim ownership over a sunset or the sound of rain, we can learn to witness anxiety without declaring, "This is mine." This simple shift from my anxiety to anxiety is present right now creates a subtle but powerful space, a space to breathe. This is not me. This points to a deeper truth. We are not defined by this emotion. We are not broken. We are not flawed. We are the witness, not the storm. Anxiety may be moving through your awareness, like clouds drifting across the sky, but it is not you. Your essential nature remains clear, vast, and undisturbed, just like the sky itself, spacious enough to hold all weather without being diminished by any of it. This is not who I am. Our identity is not made of fear, anxiety, or sorrow. Beneath all of that is our awareness, compassionate, steady, and whole. This does not mean denying the reality of human experience, with all its complexity and challenge. It means recognizing that at our core, we are more than any temporary state, more than any fleeting emotion, more than any limited identity we've built or accepted. If you'd like, this mantra can become a gentle anchor. You might try whispering it the next time anxiety arises. This is not mine. This is not me. This is not who I am. Say it not with resistance, but with clarity, with the strength of truth and the softness of self-compassion. Daily practice, shifting from the storm to the sky. The next time anxiety visits you, try this. Simply pause and say to yourself, "This is not mine. This is not me. This is not who I am." You may notice something remarkable. The emotion might still be present, but its power to define you begins to fade. You shift from being inside the storm to becoming the sky that holds it. This practice becomes especially powerful when paired with mindful awareness of the body. Notice where anxiety shows up physically. Perhaps it's a tightening in the chest, a knot in the stomach, or tension in the shoulders. Breathe into these areas, offering them your gentle attention. Then gently remind yourself, "This sensation is not mine. This sensation is not me. This sensation is not who I am. Feel how this creates space around the physical experience, allowing it to be present without overwhelming you. Likewise, when anxious thoughts arise, worries about the future, ruminations about the past, harsh self-judgments, observe them with the same gentle awareness. Acknowledge their content without getting swept into their stories. Then remember, this thought is not mine. This thought is not me. This thought is not who I am. Notice how the thought begins to lose its solidity and urgency, becoming just one of many passing mental events, rather than an urgent truth demanding your belief. Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "Feelings come and go, like clouds in a windy sky. Conscious breathing is my anchor." And so it is with this practice. The mantra becomes a lighthouse in the fog, a compass when you feel lost inside your own mind. The wisdom of aging, a timeless essence. As we grow older, this truth becomes not only helpful, but necessary. Life brings with it new uncertainties, unexpected loneliness, changes in the body, and inevitable goodbyes. But none of these things make us less whole. None of them diminish who we truly are. Think of the many changes you've lived through, the child you once were, the young adult finding their way, the middle-aged person navigating responsibilities, the elder you are today. All of these versions of you have come and gone, but something essential has remained. Something that witnessed every one of these transformations, and yet was never transformed itself. This witnessing presence, this awareness, is what Buddhist practice points to as your true nature. Not the ever-shifting shapes of your life, but the consciousness that has known them all. The phrase, "This is not mine, this is not me, this is not who I am," is not just for moments of panic. It's a mantra of liberation, a way to reclaim your space, to remember your essence, peaceful, aware, eternal. Because in truth, you have never been your anxiety. You are the stillness that remains when the wave has passed. You are the sky that holds all passing clouds. You are still here, as you've always been, beneath the movements of life. Everyday meditation, from understanding to embodiment. It's one thing to hear a teaching that stirs the heart, like a cool breeze through an open window after a long, stifling silence. But it's something else entirely to bring that teaching into daily life, where dishes pile up, the phone rings, aches remind you of time's silent hand, and the heart, oh, the heart still trembles. This is where the real work begins, and also where the greatest peace can be found. The Buddha never cared for lofty ideas for their own sake. His wisdom was always meant to be lived. In the marketplace, in the home, on forest paths, in the middle of ordinary human life, with all its messiness and beauty. So the mantra, "This is not mine, this is not me, this is not who I am," is not just for meditation cushions or sacred texts. It's something to carry with you into the noise and wonder of everyday life. It's a practice for the 3 a.m. anxiety spiral, for the tense moment in a difficult conversation, for the jolt of fear when bad news arrives, for the quiet hum of worry woven into an otherwise ordinary day. Start simple, a gentle, powerful practice. Let's begin with something you can do right now as you read or listen, something you can return to again and again in moments of need. Breath and mantra practice, from the storm to the stillness. Find a moment to pause. Sit quietly, or if you're standing, let your feet fully rest on the ground. Allow your body to be natural, without forcing anything. Inhale slowly. Exhale slowly. Let your breath be like a gentle hand on your back, anchoring, soothing. Now, bring to mind something that's been causing you anxiety. It might be a subtle, persistent worry humming in the background, or something heavier, a decision, a regret, a conversation that still echoes inside you. Don't judge it, just hold it lightly in your awareness, as if placing a stone in the palm of your hand. As you sit with this feeling, begin to gently say out loud, or quietly in your heart, "This is not mine." Pause. Let the words settle. Feel how they begin to loosen the grip, the tight clenching of my problem, my fear, my fault. This is not me. Pause again. Notice the space opening between you and the emotion, not a cold distance of disconnection, but a warm space of witnessing. You are the one aware of the anxiety, not the anxiety itself. This is not who I am. And breathe. With each repetition, feel the tension soften, maybe just a little at first, maybe more. You're not denying the feeling, you're simply witnessing it, without owning it, without becoming it. Now imagine your breath like a current of air flowing through an open house. It moves through the room of worry, gently clearing the space, not forcing anything out, just creating room. The walls of the house remain strong. That house is you, stable, grounded, whole. The anxious thought is just a guest. It may stay for a while, but it doesn't live there, and it doesn't hold the keys. This is the power of practice, simple yet profound, gentle yet transformational. And here's the beauty. You don't need to sit on a meditation cushion or be in a retreat center to awaken peace. You need it at 3 a.m., when you wake with heaviness in your chest. You need it when your adult child hasn't called in weeks and you begin to wonder if you did something wrong. You need it when aching joints remind you that time is moving and not everything is in your control. In those moments, don't look for perfection, look for presence. Inhale, gently say, "This is not mine." Exhale, "This is not me." Inhale again, "This is not who I am." And then return to whatever is before you, washing a dish, folding a blanket, stroking your dog, listening to the wind moving through the trees outside the window. In this way, the practice becomes seamless, not a separate act, but a way of being. It becomes a thread woven through the fabric of your life, a quiet remembering that you can return to whenever you need it. You are not your anxiety. You are the awareness in which anxiety arises and passes, like morning mist in sunlight. And here is the beautiful truth. The more you practice this, the more your nervous system begins to understand that you are safe. You are not trapped in the past. You are not drowning in the what-ifs. You are here, you are breathing, you are whole. Each time you remember, "This is not mine. This is not me. This is not who I am," you are creating new neural pathways, new patterns in your body and brain. You are training yourself not to meet anxiety with more anxiety, but with expansive awareness. Over time, this becomes less effortless and more like a natural response, an instinctive movement of the mind toward freedom. Thich Nhat Hanh once wrote, "The present moment is filled with joy and happiness. If you are attentive, you will see it." The phrase, "This is not mine. This is not me. This is not who I am," is a bridge back to that joy, a quiet invitation to remember that your true self has never been broken by fear. So the next time anxiety appears,
Don't run. Don't resist. Welcome it, like a guest you no longer fear. Invite it to sit down, look it in the eyes, and gently remind both of you, this is not who I am. Because who you are is the stillness beneath the storm, the space within the noise, and love, always love, that holds it all.
Impermanence. Dancing with change. Now, let us gently shift our attention to another powerful teaching from the Buddhist tradition, one that deepens and complements our understanding of non-identification. It is the teaching of impermanence, or anicca in Pali, the language in which the Buddha spoke. Impermanence points to the truth that everything in our experience is in constant flux, arising and fading in an endless stream of transformation. This teaching is not meant to be discouraging. On the contrary, it is meant to be liberating. When we truly understand and accept the impermanent nature of all things, our thoughts, emotions, sensations, and circumstances, we begin to hold our experiences more lightly. We can learn to dance with life rather than struggle against its natural rhythms. Anxiety often thrives on the illusion of permanence. It whispers, "This feeling will never end," or "I will always be like this," or "Things will never get better." These thoughts create a sense of being stuck, of enduring endless suffering. But the truth of impermanence offers a different perspective. It reminds us, no state, no matter how intense or uncomfortable, lasts forever. Everything changes, everything passes. Even this anxiety, this fear, this pain will shift and transform, as all things do. The evidence of impermanence, the world around you and within. Look at the natural world and its ever-turning cycles. Day becomes night, and night returns to day. Winter gives way to spring, spring to summer, summer to autumn, in an endless dance of renewal. The moon waxes and wanes. Clouds gather and dissolve. Tides rise and fall. Even mountains, seemingly solid and unchanging, are slowly being shaped by wind and water, gradually transformed over time. Your very body is a testament to impermanence. The cells that make up your physical form are constantly being replaced. Your breath flows in and out, never the same breath twice. Sensations arise, linger for a moment, and fade. The child you once were has grown into the adult you are now, and that process of change continues with every passing day. Nothing stays the same. Your mind, too, is always changing. Thoughts arise and vanish like bubbles on the surface of water. Emotions swell and recede like waves upon the shore. Even in the midst of overwhelming anxiety, when it feels all-consuming and endless, there are still moments, perhaps only fleeting glimpses, when the grip loosens, when clarity returns, when peace arises. These moments are impermanence at work. The Buddha taught, "Whatever is born will also die." This simple phrase reveals a profound truth. Everything that has a beginning must also have an end. Everything that arises in our awareness will eventually pass away. This is not a cause for despair. It is a reason for hope. It means that difficult states are not forever. It means suffering does not last eternally. It means that change, the very thing anxiety so often fears, is in fact our greatest ally. The story of Maya, the space between anxieties. Let me share with you a story that beautifully illustrates this teaching. There was a woman named Maya, 70 years old, who had struggled with insomnia and anxiety for most of her adult life. Night after night, she lay awake, her mind spinning with worries about her health, her finances, the well-being of her children.
Anxiety seemed to grow louder in the dark, carrying a sense of overwhelming urgency. Over the years, Maya had tried many different approaches: medications, relaxation techniques, avoiding caffeine, keeping a strict sleep schedule. Some helped a little, but nothing truly changed her core experience. Night remained a time of struggle, and anxiety had become something she believed was a fixed part of who she was. One day, Maya attended a one-day retreat on Buddhist meditation. The teacher spoke about impermanence and offered a simple practice. Throughout the day, the teacher said, notice the changing nature of all your experiences. Just observe how nothing lasts. Sounds come and go. Thoughts arise and vanish. Sensations shift and transform. Even strong emotions, if we look closely, are constantly in motion. Maya decided to try this practice during her next anxious night. Instead of resisting the sensations or trying to make them go away, she simply observed them with gentle curiosity. That night, as she lay awake with the familiar tightness in her chest and racing thoughts, she began to watch her experience moment by moment. She noticed something surprising. Anxiety wasn't a solid, unchanging block of sensation. It quivered and shifted. Sometimes it grew stronger, sometimes it softened. Sometimes her thoughts were fast and chaotic, other times they slowed and widened. Sometimes her chest felt tight, sometimes the tension moved to her shoulders, and sometimes it disappeared completely for a moment. As she continued to observe with this gentle attention, Maya began to notice something she had never seen before: tiny spaces between the moments of anxiety, brief pauses when, for just an instant, her system rested. Those spaces had always been there, but she had been so caught inside her anxiety that she had missed them. With practice, Maya began to turn her attention more and more toward those spaces, not to escape her anxiety, but simply to notice the natural pauses in its flow. And gradually, something began to shift. Anxiety still came, but it no longer felt like a solid, permanent state. It became more like weather passing through, sometimes stormy, sometimes calm, but always changing. I still have anxious nights, Maya told the teacher months later, but they don't rule me anymore. I know they'll pass, just like everything passes. And somehow, just knowing that brings peace.
Liberation through impermanence. Trusting the rhythm of change. This is the liberation that comes from truly understanding impermanence. When we realize that anxiety, like all states, is destined to shift, we begin to hold it differently. We can learn to ride its waves instead of being pulled under. We can begin to trust in the natural rhythm of arising and passing that governs every experience. Try this simple practice the next time anxiety arises. Instead of immediately trying to make it go away, observe it with gentle curiosity. Notice how it changes from moment to moment. Is it growing stronger or weaker? Is it moving within your body? Are there fleeting moments when it's not there at all? Just as you might watch clouds drift across the sky, observe the shifting nature of your own anxiety. As you practice in this way, you may begin to discover what Maya discovered: that anxiety is not a solid, permanent state, but a flowing process, always moving, always changing. And in that discovery, a deep sense of freedom begins to arise. If anxiety isn't permanent, you don't need to fear being stuck in it forever. If it changes naturally all the time, you don't have to work so hard to change it. You can begin to trust in the process itself, in the natural wisdom of impermanence. The Buddha expressed this insight in a simple verse: all conditioned things are impermanent. When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. This is the path to purification. To turn away from suffering does not mean to become numb or indifferent. It means to see through the illusion that suffering is fixed and forever. It means to recognize that even our most difficult experiences are part of a flowing, shifting process. And in that recognition, to find a measure of freedom. Non-attachment, opening the hand to life. Closely related to the teaching of impermanence is another core concept in Buddhism, non-attachment, or letting go. This doesn't mean not caring or becoming emotionally numb. Instead, it refers to holding our experiences, our preferences, even our identities with an open hand, rather than clenching them in a tight fist. Anxiety often arises from clinging to specific outcomes, to fixed images of the self, to the illusion of control. We want things to go a certain way, and when reality threatens to veer from our expectations, fear arises. We hold tightly to what is familiar, comfortable, and known, and we resist change, uncertainty, the unknown. This clinging creates tension in the body and mind, a sense of fighting against life rather than flowing with it. The Buddha taught that this clinging, this grasping, is the root of suffering. Not because the things we cling to are bad in themselves, but because the act of clinging creates distress. When we grip too tightly, a relationship, a job, a home, a self-image, a routine, we set ourselves up for pain because everything must eventually change. The tighter we hold, the more it hurts when the inevitable shift arrives. The practice of non-attachment invites us to loosen our grip, not to abandon what matters to us, but to hold it with reverence instead of desperation, to love without clinging, to care without control, to live fully without demanding guarantees. The image of the open hand, freedom to give and receive. Consider the image of a hand. When it's clenched into a fist, it cannot receive anything new. It's tight, tense, closed. But when it opens, when the fingers soften and the palm turns upward, it can both give and receive freely. There is spaciousness here. There is willingness. There is a way of engaging that does not grasp. The open hand represents the quality of non-attachment, not withdrawal, not indifference, but a way of relating to life with both full participation and deep acceptance. We care, we love, we engage, but we do not cling. We recognize that everything is flowing, that nothing can be possessed or controlled forever, and we make peace with that truth. Anxiety often softens when we practice this kind of letting go, when we stop trying to control what cannot be controlled, when we stop demanding certainty in an inherently uncertain world, when we stop clinging to fixed ideas of who we are and how life should be. There is profound relief in surrendering to the flow of life, in trusting the process rather than trying to manage every outcome. The story of David, letting go of a professional identity. Let me share another story that illustrates this teaching. There was a man named David, 68 years old, who had built a successful career as an architect. For decades, his work had been the core of his identity. He took pride in his designs, his reputation, and the mark he had left on the built environment. But with age and shifting market conditions, securing the kinds of projects he was used to began to grow more difficult. As his work started to slow down, David experienced intense anxiety. His mind became flooded with worry. Am I becoming useless? What is my worth if I'm not working? Who am I if I'm not an architect? He found himself clinging desperately to his professional identity, resisting the natural transition that was unfolding. And the tighter he held on, the more he suffered. One day, David happened to visit a nearby botanical garden. As he walked among the plants, he noticed an elderly gardener carefully pruning a rose bush. The man wasn't just removing dead branches, but also some healthy ones, even buds that had not yet bloomed. Curious, David asked why. To help it thrive, the gardener explained. It needs to let go of some things, even the good ones. If it tries to hold every branch, every bud, it spreads itself too thin. By letting go of a few, it allows others to flourish. There is wisdom in that release. Something in the gardener's words resonated deeply with David. He began to wonder if his clinging to a full-time professional identity was actually holding back other parts of his life from blooming. What might emerge, he thought, if he loosened his grip on who he thought he needed to be? In the months that followed, David began to practice letting go intentionally. Not abandoning his work entirely, but releasing his attachment to it as the sole source of his value and self-definition. He began to explore other interests, photography, volunteering at a local community design center, spending more time with his grandchildren. As he allowed himself to let go of who he had been, he began to discover who he might still become. The anxiety didn't vanish overnight, but it began to shift. The tight knot of fear that once accompanied thoughts of slowing down started to soften as David opened himself to new possibilities. "I'm still an architect," he told a friend, "but I'm also many other things. And I'm discovering that letting go doesn't feel like loss. Sometimes it feels like making room for something new." The wisdom of non-attachment. This is the wisdom of non-attachment, of letting go. Not giving up on what matters, but holding it more lightly. Not retreating from life, but engaging with it more freely, unburdened by the weight of clinging. When we release our tight grip on how things should be, including how we think we should feel, what we think we should do, and who we think we should be, we make space for life to unfold in ways we never imagined. The Buddha once said, "In the end, only three things matter: how well you have loved, how gently you have lived, and how gracefully you have let go of things not meant for you." This letting go is not a one-time event, but an ongoing practice, a continuous releasing of what no longer serves, no longer fits, no longer reflects the truth of who we are becoming. Try this practice, the open hand. Think of something you've been clinging to, perhaps a self-image, an expectation, a specific outcome that's been troubling you. Now imagine holding it in an open palm, not gripping it tightly, but simply supporting it gently. Acknowledge its importance to you, but also allow for the possibility that it may change, may grow, may even need to leave. Feel the spaciousness that comes from holding it this way. The breath flows more easily. The heart beats a little softer. Non-attachment doesn't mean not caring. It means caring without clinging, loving without demanding, living without resisting change. And in that openness, anxiety often finds far less fuel to feed its flame.
The middle way, finding balance between extremes. Another powerful teaching from the Buddhist tradition that can transform our relationship with anxiety is known as the middle way. This refers to finding balance between extremes, walking a path that avoids both indulgence and denial, both clinging and aversion. It's a way of living that is neither too tight nor too loose, neither rigid nor chaotic. Anxiety often pulls us toward extremes. We may swing between obsessive worry and complete avoidance, between overthinking every detail and total shutdown, between rigid control and complete surrender. The middle way offers a balanced alternative, a path of moderation, of skillful engagement that neither clings nor rejects. The Buddha discovered the middle way through his own experience. After years of asceticism, denying the body, foregoing food and comfort in pursuit of spiritual awakening, he realized that such extreme self-denial was not the path to liberation. But he also saw that the opposite extreme, giving in to every desire and avoiding all discomfort, was equally unhelpful. The middle way emerged as a path of balance, caring for the body's needs without becoming a slave to its cravings, acknowledging emotions without being ruled by them, facing life's challenges without being overwhelmed. The middle way and anxiety. The middle way can be especially helpful in working with anxiety. Rather than resisting anxious feelings, one extreme, or being completely consumed by them, the other extreme, we can find a middle path. I notice that anxiety is here. I will give it a little gentle attention to see if it has something useful to tell me, but I won't assume that everything it says is true. I'll take reasonable precautions, but I won't let fear unnecessarily limit my life. This balanced approach also applies to self-care. The middle way doesn't mean forcing yourself to meditate for hours when you're exhausted, nor does it mean abandoning all practice when things feel difficult. It means tuning in to what genuinely supports you in each moment. Maybe it's 5 minutes of mindful breathing, maybe a walk in nature, a call with a friend, or simply a good night's sleep. The middle way invites responsiveness over rigidity, flexibility over force. The middle way in spiritual practice. The middle way also applies to how we relate to spiritual practice itself. Sometimes people approach Buddhism or meditation with the expectation that they'll never feel anxious again, that they'll reach some perfectly calm state and stay there forever. But this expectation itself can become a source of suffering. The middle way offers a gentler view. Practice isn't about never feeling anxious. It's about relating to anxiety differently when it arises. It's not about reaching some flawless state. It's about meeting each moment with greater awareness and compassion. In the end, the middle way reminds us that peace is not found at the extremes. It lives in the gentle, wise center, where we are fully engaged with life, but not entangled in it, where we care deeply, but hold lightly, where we act with intention, but rest in acceptance. The story of Helen, balancing independence and dependence. Let me share a story that beautifully illustrates this teaching. There was a woman named Helen, 73 years old, who had always been known for her competence and self-reliance. She raised 3 children, mostly on her own, after her husband passed away early, successfully ran a small business, and took pride in never needing help from anyone. But as she aged and her health declined, she found herself caught between 2 extremes. On one hand, she resisted accepting any help, pushing herself to maintain complete independence, even when it was no longer reasonable or safe. On the other hand, she was overwhelmed by anxiety about becoming a burden to her children, sometimes imagining the worst-case scenario, complete dependency. She swung between stubborn self-sufficiency and fearful anticipation of helplessness. A friend who practiced Buddhism gently suggested that Helen might be seeking a middle way. "There's a path between doing everything yourself and doing nothing at all," the friend said kindly. "There's a way to accept some help without giving up your autonomy. Both extremes, refusing all support and fearing total dependence, are creating suffering for you." Helen began to explore what this middle way might look like in her own life. She started with small steps, allowing her daughter to drive her to medical appointments while still managing her daily affairs herself. She hired a neighborhood teenager to help in the garden while continuing to care for her beloved flowers. She joined a senior center where she both received support and offered it, finding a balance between giving and receiving that felt meaningful and sustainable. As Helen practiced this middle way, her anxiety began to soften. She was no longer trapped in the false dichotomy of either full independence or total helplessness. She found a path between those extremes, a path of mutuality, of appropriate self-care, combined with thoughtful acceptance of support. "I'm learning," she told her friend, "that asking for help when I need it isn't weakness, and accepting my limitations doesn't mean I'm giving up my strength. There is wisdom in seeking the middle way." The promise of the middle way. This is the promise of the middle way. Not perfection, but balance. Not the absence of challenges, but a wiser way to meet them. Not a life without anxiety, but a relationship with anxiety that doesn't swing between denial and overwhelm. The Buddha described this middle way as avoiding two extremes: self-indulgence, which is base, vulgar, worldly, ignoble, and unprofitable, and self-mortification, which is painful, ignoble, and unprofitable. Instead, he taught a middle way that gives rise to insight, to wisdom, leading to peace, to clarity, and to awakening. In your own relationship with anxiety, consider where you might find this middle way. Where might you be too rigid, too controlling, too resistant to what is? Where might you be too passive, too overwhelmed, too identified with fear? The middle way invites balance, not fighting anxiety nor collapsing into it, but meeting it with clear awareness and a compassionate response. This balance isn't static. It's a dynamic state that shifts with changing conditions, like a skilled sailor adjusting the sails with the wind. Sometimes the middle way means decisive action. Other times it means patient observation. Sometimes it means seeking support. Other times it means leaning into your own inner resources. Wisdom lies in discerning what is needed in each unique moment, rather than applying a rigid formula. And in doing so, we live not just wisely, but more freely with grace.
Interdependent arising. The infinite web of connection. As we deepen our exploration of Buddhist wisdom for working with anxiety, let us turn to another powerful teaching: the awareness of interdependent arising, sometimes referred to as interbeing or interconnectedness. This teaching reveals a profound truth, that nothing exists in isolation. Everything is connected to everything else, arising together in a vast web of mutual dependence. Anxiety often thrives in a sense of isolation. When we are caught in fear, we may feel cut off from others, alone in our struggles, separated from the flow of life. We may believe that our pain is unique, that no one else could possibly understand, that we must face our fears in solitude. This very sense of separateness intensifies suffering, adding loneliness to anxiety, disconnection to fear. But the Buddha's teaching on interdependent arising offers a different perspective. It reminds us that we are never truly alone, that our lives are woven together with countless others, that our very existence depends on an infinite web of relationships, from the air we breathe to the food we eat, from the words we speak to the thoughts we think. Everything arises in connection, in relationship, in interdependence. When we begin to see the truth of this interconnection, our anxiety begins to shift. The feeling of being a solitary self facing overwhelming challenges starts to loosen, replaced by the awareness that we are held within the web of life, supported by countless visible and invisible connections. We begin to feel less isolated in our struggles, more aligned with the shared nature of human experience.
Thich Nhat Hanh, and the concept of interbeing. Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, who brought mindfulness practice to millions in the West, coined the term interbeing to describe this profound sense of connection. He often used the example of a single sheet of paper to illustrate the idea. If you are a poet, you will clearly see that there is a cloud floating in this sheet of paper. Without the cloud, there would be no rain. Without rain, the trees cannot grow. And without trees, we cannot make paper. He would go on tracing these connections. The logger who cut the tree, the wheat that became bread to feed the logger, the sun that nourished the wheat, and so on, into a vast web of interdependent relationships. Nothing exists by itself. Everything is in interbeing. This awareness can bring deep comfort when anxiety arises. Instead of facing fear as an isolated individual, we can remember our place in the greater whole, our connection to all life. We can draw strength from these connections, finding support not only in human relationships, but also in our fundamental belonging to the earth, to the elements, to the vast flow of life itself. The story of Robert, finding connection in nature. Let me share a story that illustrates this teaching. There was a man named Robert, 70 years old, living alone in a small apartment. After his wife passed away, his grown children had moved to distant cities. Though they called regularly, Robert spent most of his days in solitude. Gradually, a quiet but persistent anxiety began to color his experience. Not acute panic, but a low-level unease, a sense of vulnerability and isolation that made even simple tasks feel overwhelming. One spring morning, unable to bear the confines of his apartment any longer, Robert walked to a nearby park. He sat on a bench and watched the world move around him. Families with children, joggers, people walking dogs, other elders enjoying the sunlight. As he sat there, something began to shift in his awareness. He noticed how the trees swayed in the wind, the same breeze that brushed across his skin. He watched birds gathering twigs for their nests, squirrels darting among the roots of trees. He observed people nodding to each other as they passed, small acknowledgments of shared space. A single leaf fell from a tree above and landed on his shoe. Robert picked it up, tracing the intricate veins, its connection to the branch now severed but still visible in its form. There was something in that leaf, its journey from seed to tree to ground, its role in the cycle of growth and decay, that spoke to Robert of a deeper belonging, something far greater than his temporary sense of isolation. The next day, Robert returned to the park, and the day after that. He began bringing breadcrumbs for the birds, exchanging greetings with regular morning walkers. He noticed that his mood began to lighten with these small connections. His anxiety didn't vanish completely, but it no longer dominated his experience. It became just one thread in a richer tapestry of awareness, one increasingly attuned to his place in the web of interbeing. This shift in perspective, from isolated individual to a participant in a vast network of relationships, is at the heart of the Buddhist teaching on dependent co-arising. It doesn't deny the reality of our personal experience, including anxiety when it shows up, but it places that experience within a larger context, reminding us that we are never truly alone, never fully separate from the flow of life. Practicing dependent co-arising, strength through connection. Try this simple practice the next time anxiety arises. Take a moment to become aware of the many connections supporting your existence in this very moment. Feel the ground beneath you, holding your weight. Notice the air moving in and out of your lungs, connecting you to all breathing beings.
Be aware of the temperature of the room, the sounds around you, the light that allows you to see. Recognize that even in moments of fear, you are held within a vast web of visible and invisible relationships. Then, if you like, expand this awareness to include human connection. Think of someone who cares about you, a friend, a family member, a teacher, a helper. Picture their presence beside you, their sincere wish for your well-being. Remember that all across the world, countless others are also experiencing anxiety in this very moment. You are not alone in your struggle. Feel your connection to this shared human experience. As this awareness of interconnection deepens, you may notice the anxiety itself begins to shift. Not necessarily disappearing, but perhaps softening, becoming less solid, less overwhelming. The tight knot of fear begins to loosen as you remember your place in the greater whole, your belonging to the vast family of life. Dependent origination, tending the conditions for peace. The Buddha described this understanding of interconnection through the teaching of dependent origination, a principle showing how all phenomena arise based on multiple causes and conditions. Nothing exists independently. Everything emerges from a complex web of relationships and influences. This includes our mental and emotional states. They too arise from conditions, not from some fixed inherent self. When we apply this insight to anxiety, we begin to see that it's not a solid, permanent part of who we are, but rather a temporary state that arises due to certain conditions, perhaps physical exhaustion, unresolved emotions, challenging circumstances, or habitual patterns of thought. And just as conditions can give rise to anxiety, other conditions can give rise to peace, clarity, and ease. This realization is empowering. It means we are not stuck with anxiety as a permanent trait or an escapable state. By skillfully working with conditions, adjusting our environment, tending to physical needs, nurturing supportive relationships, practicing mindfulness and compassion, we can cultivate the causes for greater well-being to arise. Not through force or control, but through wise attention to what fosters peace rather than turmoil. Dependent origination also reminds us that we can lean on resources beyond the individual self when facing anxiety. We can rely on the support of others, friends, family, teachers, helpers. We can find comfort in nature, in art, in spiritual traditions. We can remember that we are part of a long human lineage that has faced fear and found wise ways to meet it. We do not have to figure everything out on our own.
The Four Immeasurables, Nurturing a Peaceful Heart. Let us explore the cultivation of the Four Immeasurables, also known as the Four Brahma-viharas, qualities of the heart that open us to spaciousness and freedom. These are loving-kindness, metta, compassion, karuna, empathetic joy, mudita, and equanimity, upekkha. These heart qualities are natural antidotes to the constriction of anxiety. Where anxiety tightens, they expand. Where fear separates, they connect. Where worry creates turmoil, they bring balance. By intentionally nurturing these states of heart, we create inner conditions less favorable for anxiety to thrive and more supportive of peace. Let us now look more deeply into each of these four qualities, along with simple, concrete practices you can bring into daily life as a way to meet anxiety with wisdom and care. Loving kindness, metta. Wishing happiness for ourselves and others. Loving kindness, or metta, can be cultivated through a simple yet profound meditation practice.
Find a comfortable position, sitting or lying down. If it feels supportive, place one hand gently over your heart. Begin by offering phrases of goodwill to yourself. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be at ease. May I be peaceful. Notice any resistance that arises, any inner voices whispering that you don't deserve this kindness, or that this practice is selfish or pointless. These resistances are not to be pushed away, but gently acknowledged. They often reveal where we've internalized harsh judgments, where we've learned to withhold the care from ourselves that we so freely offer to others. Simply noticing this resistance without judgment and continuing the practice is in itself a profound act of healing. As you repeat these phrases, allow yourself to feel the intention behind them. This isn't about forcing positive emotions or denying difficult ones. It's about sincerely wishing yourself well, just as you would wish for a dear friend. Sometimes it can help to visualize yourself as a young child, or to recall a time when you were struggling, and to offer loving kindness to that tender version of yourself. After a few minutes of offering metta to yourself, you may gradually expand the circle to include others. Perhaps begin with someone who naturally evokes love or gratitude in you. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be at ease. May you be peaceful. Feel how your heart naturally opens toward this person, how the wish for their happiness flows effortlessly. Then, if you like, expand further, to neutral people, those you feel neither strong affection nor aversion toward, to difficult people, those with whom you have tension or conflict, and finally to all beings everywhere. May all beings be safe. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be at ease. May all beings be peaceful. This gradual widening helps cultivate a sense of connection and shared humanity, directly countering the isolating effects of anxiety. It reminds us that our wish for happiness, safety, and peace is universal, shared by all sentient beings. And in this awareness, the boundary between self and others begins to soften. The story of James. From fear to loving kindness toward strangers. A 72-year-old man named James had been practicing loving kindness meditation daily for several months. The most surprising thing he shared was that it had changed my relationship with strangers. He said, "I used to feel a vague sense of threat around people I didn't know. I would cross the street to avoid groups of teenagers. I felt anxious in crowded places. But after practicing metta, I began to look at unfamiliar faces and instinctively think, 'May you be happy.' Instead of seeing potential threats, the world shifted from a dangerous place into a community of people who are also just trying to be okay, just like me." Slow, deep, and melodious. Compassion, karuna, embracing suffering with warmth. Karuna, or compassion, builds upon the foundation of loving kindness, but responds specifically to suffering, both our own and that of others. Where anxiety tends to contract around pain, creating resistance and fear, compassion opens gently toward difficulty with warmth and care. It acknowledges suffering without minimizing it or being overwhelmed by it. A simple compassion practice begins with mindful awareness of your own experience. When anxiety arises, try placing a hand over your heart or another soothing part of your body. Acknowledge the difficulty with gentle words. This is a moment of suffering. This is hard. Then offer yourself compassion.
May I be kind to myself in this moment. May this pain be eased. The physical touch, combined with kind words, activates the body's caregiving system, releasing hormones like oxytocin that help counteract the stress response. It's a way of becoming your own good friend, your own compassionate companion, especially in those moments when anxiety can feel so isolating. Just like loving kindness, you can extend this compassion practice to others, recognizing the suffering in those around you and offering a sincere wish for that suffering to be eased. This doesn't mean solving anyone's problems or taking on their emotional burdens. It simply means acknowledging their pain with an open heart, rather than turning away in fear or discomfort. The story of Sarah transforming her relationship with chronic pain. Sarah, a 68-year-old retired teacher, found that compassion practice transformed her relationship with chronic pain and the anxiety it caused. She shared, "I used to fight the pain. I'd get angry at my body, frustrated with my limitations, scared that it would never end. But learning to meet the pain with compassion, to say, 'This is really hard. May I be kind to myself right now,' changed everything. The pain is still there, but my relationship to it is different. There's less fear, less struggle, and strangely, that often means less pain too."
Sharing joy with all beings. Mudita, or sympathetic joy, is the capacity to truly rejoice in the happiness, success, and beauty experienced by others or by oneself. This quality directly counteracts anxiety's tendency to focus on what is wrong, missing, or threatening. It rebalances our attention, ensuring we recognize and savor the good in life, not just the challenges. To cultivate mudita, try this simple practice. Each evening before bed, recall 3 moments from the day that brought even a small spark of happiness or contentment. It could be the flavor of a good meal, a kind interaction with a stranger, a beautiful moment in nature, completing a task, or the simple pleasure of a warm shower. Allow yourself to linger with those moments, to feel the positive emotion connected to them. This isn't about forcing positivity or denying difficulty. It's about ensuring that your attention embraces the full scope of your experience, not just the anxious parts. You can also extend this practice to include joy for the happiness of others. When you witness someone else's good fortune, success, or delight, whether it's a friend, family member, or a stranger, intentionally nurture a sense of joy for them. How wonderful that they are experiencing happiness. May it continue and grow. The story of Michael replacing a negative habit with a positive one. Michael, a 75-year-old man who struggled with anxiety for decades, found that cultivating mudita gradually shifted his default attention patterns. "I used to immediately notice what was wrong in any situation," he said. "One cloud in an otherwise blue sky, one thing going off plan in an otherwise good day. My mind was like a magnet for negativity." Learning to intentionally notice and appreciate the good, even small things like the warmth of sunshine on my face or birdsong in the morning, began to change that habit. I still notice problems, but I also naturally notice beauty, kindness, things to be grateful for. And that wider perspective makes anxiety feel less overwhelming. Equanimity, upekkha, a steady foundation of peace. Upekkha, or equanimity, is perhaps the subtlest of the 4 immeasurables, yet one of the most powerful qualities for facing anxiety. It is a state of balanced mind that remains steady amidst the inevitable ups and downs of life, not elated by pleasant experiences, nor devastated by unpleasant ones, neither clinging to what we want, nor rejecting what we don't. It's often described as a vast, unshakable peace that holds all experience with equal care and clarity. Equanimity doesn't mean indifference or detachment from life. Rather, it is deep engagement without being swept away by reactivity. It allows us to be fully present with whatever arises without being ruled by it. For anxiety, which often involves feeling overwhelmed by thoughts and emotions, upekkha offers a stable center, a place of balance amid emotional storms. A simple equanimity practice involves reflecting on the universal nature of change and the limits of personal control. You might silently repeat phrases like, "All beings experience both joy and sorrow according to causes and conditions. I am not exempt from this universal truth. May I find peace amid these changing circumstances." Another approach is to cultivate equanimity in everyday life by intentionally meeting both disappointments and joys with balance. When something doesn't go your way, a change in plans, something breaks, see if you can respond with a steady mind. This is frustrating, but it's part of life. I can respond wisely without being overwhelmed. Likewise, when something pleasant happens, enjoy it fully while recognizing its impermanence. This is delightful, and like all experiences, it will pass. I can appreciate it without clinging. The story of Eleanor, Peace Amid Aging. Eleanor, an 81-year-old woman, found that practicing equanimity transformed her relationship with aging and the anxiety it once brought. "I used to panic over every new ache, every sign of aging. But equanimity has helped me see these changes as part of life's natural flow, not as personal disasters. Now there's a spaciousness, a perspective that can hold both the difficulty and the continuing beauty of life as it is. I still care for myself, but the frantic fear that used to exhaust me is gone." The combined power of the four immeasurables. Together, these four heart qualities, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, create an inner environment less hospitable to anxiety's tight grip. They don't fight fear directly, but they offer alternatives to its contraction, narrow vision, and sense of isolation. They remind us of our capacity for warmth, care, joy, and steadiness, even in difficult moments. Try weaving these qualities into your daily life, not only in formal meditation, but in the small moments throughout your day. When anxiety arises, ask which quality might be most helpful in that moment. Sometimes it's the warmth of metta, other times the gentleness of karuna, the openness of mudita, or the steadiness of upekkha. With practice, these qualities become more readily available, offering natural antidotes to fear's contraction. The Buddha taught that these four heart qualities are not only practices, but reflections of our true nature, the mind's natural state when not clouded by confusion or reactivity. By cultivating them, we are not adding something foreign to ourselves. We are remembering what is already there, beneath the surface turbulence of anxiety and other difficult emotions.
Taking refuge, finding strength in sources of support. Now, let's turn to another powerful Buddhist teaching that can help transform anxiety, the practice of taking refuge. In Buddhist tradition, practitioners take refuge in three sources of support and guidance: the Buddha, representing awakened awareness; the Dharma, the teachings and truths; and the Sangha, the community of practitioners. This act of taking refuge is not about blind belief or dependency. It's about connecting to sources of wisdom and support that go beyond our narrow, personal viewpoint.
When anxiety arises, it often brings with it a sense of drifting, of being unanchored and without direction. Taking refuge reminds us that we are not alone in our struggles, that we can rely on a wisdom greater than our momentary fears, and that we are part of a long human tradition of people who have faced similar challenges and found a path through them. But what does taking refuge mean in the context of anxiety? It doesn't mean these sources will magically make anxiety disappear. Rather, they offer perspective, guidance, and companionship as we learn to meet fear with greater wisdom. Refuge in the Buddha means remembering our own capacity for awareness, clarity, and wakefulness. Even in the midst of intense anxiety, there is a part of us that can witness the experience without being completely overwhelmed by it. This witnessing awareness, this clarity, is what Buddhist tradition calls our Buddha nature, our innate potential for enlightened presence. When caught in fear, we can take refuge in this awareness, remembering that we are more than our passing emotional states. We can rest in the space that knows anxiety, rather than being fully identified with anxiety. This shift in perspective, from I am anxious to I am aware of anxiety, creates essential breathing space, a sense of groundedness even amidst emotional turbulence. Refuge in the Dharma means turning to teachings and practices that offer guidance for meeting difficult states. Dharma can refer both to the explicit teachings of the Buddha and to the deeper truths those teachings point to. When anxiety arises, we can take refuge in specific practices like mindful breathing, loving-kindness meditation, or reflections on impermanence, methods that have helped countless practitioners through similar moments. We can also take refuge in the deeper truths these practices reveal, that all experiences, including anxiety, are impermanent, that we are not isolated selves but interconnected with all life, that our true nature is awareness, not the transient states that pass through it. These insights offer perspective when anxiety threatens to narrow our view into a tunnel of fear. Refuge in the Sangha means remembering our connection to others walking the same path. Traditionally, this refers to the monastic community, but in a broader sense, it includes all who are sincerely engaged in the work of awakening, living with greater awareness and compassion. When anxiety appears, we can take refuge in knowing we are not alone in our struggles, that countless others have faced similar fears and found ways through. This sense of shared journey can bring deep comfort. It reminds us that anxiety is not a personal failure, but part of the human experience, that we don't have to figure everything out on our own, that we can learn from others who've walked the path before us, whether through spiritual communities, kindred friends, or books and teachings that connect us to the wisdom of others. Taking refuge in the Sangha reminds us that we are part of something greater than our individual struggles.
The story of Claire, taking refuge in the midst of an anxious night. Let me share a story that illustrates the power of taking refuge. There was a woman named Claire, 65 years old, who had been practicing meditation for many years. Despite her long practice, she still experienced periods of anxiety, especially related to health concerns. During one such period, after receiving ambiguous medical test results, her anxiety became particularly intense, disrupting her sleep, consuming her thoughts, and creating a deep sense of vulnerability and fear. One sleepless night, sitting on the edge of her bed with her heart racing, Claire remembered the practice of taking refuge. She closed her eyes and silently recited the traditional refuge prayer. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. As she spoke these words, she felt herself connecting to something beyond her immediate fear. By taking refuge in the Buddha, she became aware of the awareness that was observing the anxiety, a perspective larger than the passing state she was caught in. By taking refuge in the Dharma, she recalled the teaching of impermanence, that this difficult moment, like all moments, would pass, and the teaching of compassion,
that she could meet her fear with kindness rather than resistance. By taking refuge in the Sangha, she thought of her meditation group, of the teacher who had guided her practice, of the countless others throughout time who had faced fear and found a way through. The anxiety didn't vanish, but Claire felt less alone with it, less defined by it. She sensed herself as part of something larger, a lineage of practice, a community of seekers, a flow of life that included but was not limited to this moment of fear. From that broader perspective, the anxiety became more manageable, less overwhelming. She was able to return to bed and, eventually, drift off to sleep. The next day, Claire called her meditation teacher. "What I realized," she said, "is that taking refuge isn't about escaping difficulty. It's about finding solid ground within it. It's about remembering the resources that are always available, even when fear feels overpowering." Her teacher nodded. Yes, taking refuge isn't hiding from the storm. It's finding shelter within it. And sometimes that shelter is as simple as remembering that you're not alone, that there is wisdom to guide you, and that your awareness is greater than any temporary state that passes through it. Practicing refuge in daily life. You can practice taking refuge in your own way, adapting it to what brings meaning and support for you. It might be a formal recitation, like Claire's, or a simpler inner remembrance of the resources available to you, both internal, your own awareness, kindness, and perspective, and external, the teachings that have helped you, the people who support your path, the traditions that offer guidance. What's important is recognizing that when anxiety arises, you don't have to face it in isolation, relying solely on your own resources in that vulnerable moment. You can lean into a wisdom greater than your personal viewpoint, into practices that have stood the test of time, and into the companionship of others walking the same path. This recognition can ease the grip of anxiety, reminding you that you are part of something larger than your passing fears. Taking refuge doesn't mean anxiety will never appear. It means you have support when it does. It means you're not starting from scratch each time fear arises. It means you are connected to sources of wisdom and guidance that can help you navigate even the most challenging emotional landscapes with greater skill and ease. The final stillness, returning to the place of deepest peace. In the gentle quiet that follows refuge, allow yourself to rest in the simplicity of this moment. Feel your body supported, your breath flowing naturally, your awareness like the sky, vast and holding all experience with spaciousness and care. This awareness is always available to you, a refuge in itself, clear, open, undisturbed by the passing weather of thoughts and emotions. As we reach the end of this exploration of Buddhist teachings for working with anxiety, remember that these practices are not about achieving some perfect state of calm. They are about meeting life as it is, in all its complexity and challenge, with greater wisdom and compassion. They are about finding freedom not from difficult emotions, but within them, discovering that peace is possible even in the presence of anxiety. The path is not linear. There will be times when these practices flow easily, when awareness feels spacious and clear. There will be times when anxiety feels overwhelming, when it's hard to recall any of these teachings in the midst of fear. That too is part of the path. The Buddha never promised that practice would be smooth or progress would be steadied. He simply offered tools for meeting whatever arises with greater skill and care. What matters is not perfection, but intention, the sincere desire to understand your own mind, to soothe suffering, to live with greater awareness and kindness. Every time you remember to breathe with anxiety instead of resisting it,
Every time you offer yourself kindness in a difficult moment, every time you recognize a thought as just a thought, these are victories. These are moments of awakening. Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron, known for her accessible teachings on working with difficult emotions, writes, "We think that the point is to pass the test or overcome the problem, but the truth is that things don't really get solved. They come together and they fall apart. Then they come together again and fall apart again. It's just like that. The healing comes from letting there be room for all of this to happen, room for grief, for relief, for misery, for joy." This perspective invites us to embrace the natural cycles of experience, the arising and passing of all states, including anxiety. Instead of treating anxiety as a problem to be permanently eliminated, we can learn to make space for it when it arises, to meet it with wisdom and care, to allow it to be part of the ever-changing weather of our human experience. And in that spaciousness, that acceptance, we often find that anxiety begins to soften, not because we forced it away, but because we stopped fighting it. As you move forward from this teaching, I invite you to carry these practices gently. Don't turn them into another source of pressure or expectation. Don't use them to judge yourself when anxiety returns. Instead, let them be gifts, gentle reminders of your capacity for awareness, compassion, and peace even in the midst of difficulty. Start small. Perhaps choose just one practice that resonates with you, the recognition of "this is not me," the awareness of impermanence, the offering of compassion to your own suffering. Practice it daily in small ways. Bring it into ordinary moments before applying it to intense waves of anxiety. Like learning any skill, these practices grow stronger with use. Be patient with yourself. Be gentle. Remember that every moment of practice, however brief, plants seeds that will bear fruit in time. And remember, you are not alone on this path. From the time of the Buddha to today, countless practitioners have faced anxiety, fear, and all the challenges of being human. Their footprints are visible on the path ahead of you. Their wisdom is available to guide you. Their companionship is a reminder that while your experience is unique, the fundamental struggles of being human are shared. You are part of a vast, invisible community of seekers, those who came before, those walking beside you now, and those who will come after. In that connection, there is strength. In that belonging, there is comfort. If you've stayed with me through this journey, I want to acknowledge the attention, care, and sincerity you've brought to it. The very fact that you are listening, that you are open to these teachings, that you are willing to look at anxiety with curiosity instead of only trying to escape it, this is already an act of courage and deep wisdom. It is the beginning of transformation. The Buddha is said to have described his teachings as a finger pointing to the moon. The words themselves are not the truth, but they point toward a truth that can be directly experienced. My words tonight are merely such a pointer. The real discovery, the real transformation, happens in your own direct experience as you work with these practices in daily life. Trust that experience. Let it guide you. Let it reveal the wisdom already within you, waiting to be known.
Deep abiding, breath, awareness, and true peace. Now, as we prepare to shift into even deeper rest, I invite you simply to breathe. Feel the gentle rhythm of your inhalation and exhalation, the subtle rising and falling of your chest. Notice the small pause at the end of each exhale, a moment of perfect stillness, of natural peace. Your breath has been with you since your very first moment in this world, and it will remain with you until your last. It is a constant companion,
a natural object of meditation, always available as an anchor to the present moment. Let your attention settle in this simple awareness of the breath, not controlling it, not trying to make it deeper or slower, simply noticing it as it is. If your mind wanders into thoughts of the past or future, into planning or reminiscing, into any of the thousands of places it naturally tends to go, just notice the wandering and gently return your attention to the breath. No judgment, no disappointment, just the same patient kindness you might offer a child who's strayed from the path. Ah, there you are. Come back now. This simplicity, the return to the breath, to the body, to the present moment, is the heart of Buddhist practice. All the teachings we've explored tonight return to this, the capacity to be present, to be aware, to meet each moment with clarity and care. This capacity is your birthright. It belongs to you regardless of age, circumstances, or history. It remains available even in the presence of anxiety, even when life is difficult, even when the path ahead seems unclear. As the ancient Dhammapada reminds us, thoughts become words, words become actions, actions become habits, and habits harden into character. So watch the thoughts and ways of thinking with care. Each time you remember to meet anxiety with awareness rather than resistance, with compassion rather than judgment, you are forming new patterns in the mind and heart. You are cultivating habits of peace that, over time and with practice, will become your natural response to difficulty. Now, as we come to the close of this teaching, I invite you to rest even more deeply. Let your body grow heavy and comfortable. Let your breath find its own natural rhythm. Let your mind settle, like a jar of water that becomes clear as the sediment sinks to the bottom when left undisturbed. If you are listening as you prepare for sleep, know that these teachings will continue working within you even as you rest. The seeds of awareness, compassion, and peace that we've planted tonight will grow in their own time, in their own way. Trust the process. Let it unfold naturally, without force, without striving. And if anxiety visits you in the night, as it sometimes does, rising from the depths when the conscious mind lets down its guard, remember that you have tools to meet it wisely. Remember that you can breathe with it rather than fight it. Remember that you can offer it kindness rather than resistance. Remember that you can recognize it as a temporary guest, not a permanent resident in your mind and heart. As the Buddha said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." This peace is your true nature, not something to be earned or achieved, but something to be discovered, remembered, returned to. It is present even now, beneath the surface movements of thoughts and feelings, like the deep stillness at the bottom of a lake, undisturbed by surface waves. Rest in that peace. Trust in that peace. Let it hold you, heal you, guide you home to your true nature, vast, aware, at ease. Rest in this understanding. Rest in this peace. Rest in the natural clarity that has always been with you, behind the veil of thought and emotion, beneath the surface chaos of everyday life. This clarity is your birthright, your true home, the foundation of your being. As you drift into sleep or continue in quiet relaxation, I leave you with the traditional Buddhist blessings, wishes of well-being passed from heart to heart for thousands of years. May you be safe from inner and outer harm. May you be healthy in body and mind. May you be at peace with life just as it is. May you recognize the natural peace within your true nature. And may the benefit of this teaching extend beyond you. May it ripple outward to touch all beings, all life, all moments. May all beings be safe from inner and outer harm. May all beings be healthy in body and mind. May all beings be at peace with life just as it is. May all beings recognize the natural peace within their true nature. Thank you for walking this path with me tonight. Thank you for your attention, your openness, your willingness to explore these ancient teachings with a modern heart and mind. The wisdom they contain is not bound to any tradition or time. It belongs to all who sincerely seek freedom from suffering, all who long to live with greater awareness and compassion. May you rest well. May you awaken refreshed. And may you carry the peace of these teachings into every corner of your life, finding in them whatever supports your journey toward greater ease, greater clarity, greater love. The deep peace of the wave to you, the deep peace of the flowing air to you, the deep peace of the still earth to you, the deep peace of infinite peace to you. Good night, and may deep peace be with you.